My name is Brittany. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I help women and athletes with a holistic approach to their health, menstruation, training, performance, and life. Today, I will be sharing about creating an Ayurvedic formula, herbal formula at home in your own kitchen. So, I am here today in a cozy corner of my own kitchen with all of the spices and herbs that I have on hand most of the time. Today, I'll be sharing about how to create a formula, and then also we're going to put one together, which is the one that I use very often to address some specific menstrual imbalances that we will talk about. So, to begin, when we're creating an Ayurvedic formula, there's a couple ways to think about this. One is that traditionally, when you receive a formula, if you're working with a practitioner, you may receive it in a powdered form, and that's actually a churna. So what that means is there's all these different herbs that are addressing different areas of concern to really target healing and be very specific with healing. So when you take that, typically you then take that powder with warm water, or you take it with aloe or warm milk. There's different vehicles for administration. And that's typically something you take when you are working with a practitioner or a health counselor or a doctor of Ayurveda to address something specific. Now, today, the difference is what we are talking about is loose leaf teas that you can use at home in your own kitchen that you can purchase probably at your local store or some suppliers online to create your own herbal formula in your very own kitchen. So the one that we're going to be talking about today is one of my favorites that I've been having a lot recently, and I'll explain why. But to begin, when we're thinking about creating a formula using your loose leaf teas, there's 4 pieces that you will begin to think about. And if you don't get all of these right away, that's totally fine. Part of this exercise is to begin just using your own intuition in understanding the quality of the herbs relative to the quality of what you're experiencing so that they can create balance. So the 4 things that we want to think about when we come to our cabinet and we look at our teas, or we're going shopping for the tea that we have, for getting tea at the store, we're thinking about disease specific, dosha specific, dhatu specific, and of course your Agni. So what that means when we're thinking about the disease, so for example, what I'm going to be targeting today is something like dysmenorrhea, which is painful menstrual cramps, or menorrhagia, which is excessive menstrual flow. And so both of those are a sign of excess heat in the body. So when you experience those symptoms, whether it's painful menstruation or excessive flow, like a very, very heavy flow, that is a sign that there's too much heat in the body and specifically in the blood. And the way that the body tries to release that is through the blood itself, through menstruation. So when we're thinking about that, we're thinking about cooling, we're thinking about astringency to lighten up that excess heat. And we're also thinking about that movement and flow in creating healthy flow so that there's not stagnation within the uterus. Because when there is stagnation, typically there is pain, and that can be a sign that the flow is not coming easily. So thinking about that as the disease, and then the dosha specific, which I just mentioned, which is pitta. So we are addressing the excess heat in the body, specifically the uterus. And then the dhatu, meaning the tissue, we are talking about the reproductive tissue, specifically the uterine tissue, the uterine lining, the endometrium, right? And then we're also thinking about our Agni, right? Because we always, whenever we're taking something in, we want to make sure that Agni is present in the body to be able to support a healthy digestion of whatever's coming in. So when we're thinking about this, the herbs that I start to look to, I begin with rose. And rose is one of those herbs that is very, very soothing and healing to many different channels and tissues in the body. But when we are thinking about dysmenorrhea or menorrhagia, or excess of heat in the reproductive tissues, rose is a beautiful herb to turn to. It's also very restorative for the nervous system and the nerve tissue, and it can help soothe an overstimulated or an overactive experience for the sensory organs. So a beautiful thing to use right now when there is a lot of excess stimulation in the external world. So I'm going to add a little bit of rose. And so rose is actually kind of doing a couple things here for me, right? So rose with its cooling and astringency and an affinity for the blood, rose is the disease specific and also the Dhatu, the tissue specific. So rose has an affinity to support the blood and cool the blood. And it also has an affinity for supporting the uterus as well. So I'm starting with rose. It's also a very lovely aromatic herb. So even just the smell of rose, I already feel calmer in my senses and my nervous system. So that's one that's actually hitting like 2 of the 4 areas that we want to think about. And the next one I'm going to use is Gotu Kola. And Gotu Kola is one that I turn to very often because I am predominantly Pitta constitution. I have a very Pitta type mind. And Gotu Kola specifically, it is a mind herb, so it helps that relaxation, that stress relief. It helps when there's feelings of tension or expectation or tightness. A lot of those types of feelings in the mind can also create that same type of tension in the uterus, right? And so that can be a contributor to dysmenorrhea. And that was something that I struggled with for many years. And once I addressed a lot of the pitta imbalances, both in the body and in the mind, some of it through using these herbs to support that dysmenorrhea really healed and really, I don't experience that anymore. So that was a really key piece, the mind-body connection we talk about very often, but understanding the relationship of what's going on in the mind and how it shows up in the body, because oftentimes the qualities are very similar in what you experience. So Gotu Kola for me is kind of in my rotation often because I'm very Pitta in the mind and how I think, and this really helps me stay balanced. I did notice when I started taking Gotu Kola, I really felt a relief and a release in my mind and in my rigidity that I was experiencing. So Pitta in the mind out of balance can be very critical, very judgmental. And this is something that really helped me relax. I could feel a physical release as I started to incorporate this into my regular rotation. So Gotu Kola is lovely, and in this formula, it is addressing specifically Pitta, so we're dosha specific, and also has cooling properties. And so the other thing we want to look at is our Agni, right? So the 4th one is our Agni. And what I turn to for that in this formula is Tulsi, also known as holy basil. And Tulsi is a very, very lovely herb. And what's nice about this is that it's warming, right? So it is the digestive, it will stimulate Agni, and it's warming. And that's important for this because we've used 2 cooling herbs, great for addressing the pitta type imbalances, but we don't want to overdo it, right? It's all about creating that balance. So Tulsi, with its warming energy, can be really effective in balancing out the two other herbs that are cooling. So this also being a digestive, it's going to help enhance the Agni and support Agni, which we always want to do. And the other option that I do sometimes that I'll add, depending on how I'm feeling, is add a little bit of dry ginger. You could do fresh as well. Dry ginger is going to be more potent, so it's going to be more heating as opposed to warming. Fresh ginger will be more warming because it has more water in it, right? As opposed to the dry is more processed, and it's going to be hotter in a smaller quantity. So I can take just a teeny tiny bit and add it in there. I'm not going to use too much today because I have noticed that my digestion has been a little bit more on the pitta side. So I'm not going to overdo it with heat, but I'm just going to add in a little bit of digestive support, Agni support, and a little balancing to the cool qualities of the rose and the gotu kola. So that one's an optional, but if there is a lot of pitta or heat, I would stay away from that. But if you're looking to just have a nice balanced formula, you are welcome to add in that ginger as well. So here we have the rose, we have gotu kola, and we have ginger. And so I'm going to boil the water uncovered so that it releases some of the gases, lightens up the water a little bit so it's not so heavy. And then when it's boiled, I'll let it cool slightly so that it's not boiling when I pour it over my tea so that it doesn't burn the leaves. When it's ready at the right temperature, I will then let this steep for about 5 minutes. So that is how we can begin to create formulas right in your very own kitchen. So I have these herbs here that I go through rotation. You really want to keep them relevant so you don't have herbs that are super old. Typically like a 6-month shelf life is what you want to aim for. So which is kind of nice for like the turn of each season, fall and spring. I can kind of reset for the next couple months. And I do keep my smaller jars. I will buy these fresh more often. The ones that I use maybe a little bit less. So that is the basics for creating an Ayurvedic formula at home using loose leaf teas. And again, what you want to think about is disease specific, dosha specific, Dhatu, which is tissue specific, and then also your Agni. So if you're thinking about those, start there. And again, what's really wonderful about herbal medicine is that you can try it in as a tea, and the effects are mild, right? It's very different than taking synthetic medicine, where the effects can be more profound right away. This allows you to play around a little bit and have some flexibility to trying out herbs and notice what changes for you, if anything. And if nothing changes, then maybe increase the dose or the quantity a little bit and then reassess. Has anything changed? No? Okay, maybe I can increase. And then when you get to that point where you notice change and maybe it's too much, then you know you can scale back a little bit. So that's what's nice about herbal medicine, is that it's mild enough, but still effective. So that completes our video for today. I hope that you enjoy creating formulas at home. I certainly am going to enjoy this tea right now to begin my day. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you next time.